Good afternoon, evening, and morning to everyone who is with us today at the December 2014 meeting of the Board of Creating the Future. We are so pleased to have you here, and we're going to start our meeting as we have often been doing recently by walking through our vision, the purpose for this board, this organization, and for this meeting. Creating the Future envisions communities where evening and morning to everyone who is with us today at the December 2014 meeting of the Board of Creating the Future.
You ever feel like you're coming and going?
I sometimes feel like once was enough. So, Creating the Future envisions communities where people are living well, individually and collectively. We know that such a future is possible because it's not impossible. To accomplish that, our 10-year mission is to change the questions embedded in the day-to-day work of individuals and organizations so that everyone naturally brings out the best in each other and in our world. My name is Gail Valerian, and I am a board member with Creating the Future, and I'm going to invite all of our board members to introduce themselves, where they're from, what they do, and perhaps we can include with that then our awesome. We know that there are probably people that are participating via Twitter and through our Walking the Talk blog, and we welcome all of you and hope that you too will participate by introducing yourself as well as telling us what has been awesome with and for you lately. So we will start with who is live.
We will only be able to monitor if you're doing that. You use the hashtag CTFuture.
Thank you. Okay, so whoever starts, we will go to the right from you. No, we'll go to the left from you. So I guess that would make it Carl.
Hi, I'm Carl Wilding. I'm based in London, so I'm the European representative of Creating the Future. Oh, crikey, and awesome for me. Well, we had a big conference about trustees and governance about 3 weeks ago, and I ran a workshop that was about social media and trustees, and my chair said it was the best workshop he'd ever been to. So.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It was all down to the presenters, not down to me.
So, Carl, does the board and the world get like a preview or an encore of that amazing workshop that you did?
Oh, cracky, that's an interesting idea. Well, you can, all the presentations are all downloadable, so maybe I should send them this way and indeed to my own board as well. But it was a really good workshop, and it was very sort of realistic because it had people there who sort of used social media and said that they'd been dragged kicking and screaming into using it, but recognised that it was useful and important. So it was very much a realistic sort of version of how can you do this in a way that's not too disruptive of your life.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Nice.
Awesome.
It is awesome.
So, Gail, I believe that when the Hangout sets up with each person, that I think people are in different places for different people. So, if you're guiding who's next, I think you'll say who's next.
So you guys don't know that Justin is sitting next to Carl.
Good. Now I know who's to my left. Thanks. This is Justin Pollock. I'm in Washington, D.C. I have my own practice here doing community benefit work. And my awesome is totally personal, but it just goes to show that you can learn things from your personal life that affects the grander world. They're about my daughters. My youngest daughter is 5 years old, learning to read. And it is just amazing to see in her this deep desire of, I want a world where I can read. And she's doing everything in her power to make that a reality, and it's just quite inspirational to watch her, and it's so exciting to see her accomplish that. And then the other is my older daughter, who just turned 8, is probably the total embodiment of empathy. And so when she speaks and does things, she just makes me realize what it means to think about other people and to really be deeply attached to them. So I am grateful for the awesome that is my two daughters.
Wow.
Wow, 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 wow.
That's so beautiful. Dimitri, that puts you up next.
See, now, I wouldn't have thought that by looking at our screen. Kind of a combination of awesomes. It's been an awesome 2 weeks here, and things have been going on. Over Thanksgiving, both of my boys came to town, and it's not often anymore that we're all together at the same time. So we got to spend the day together, the several days together, and they were in charge of preparing Thanksgiving. So I literally just brought a side dish, which is great. They cooked everything from scratch, and it was a Greek Thanksgiving, so there was no turkey to be found. It was roast lamb, and there was chicken, and there was spinach pies and cheese pies, and they did all of this in salads and breads and whatnot, and they argued and poked at each other in the kitchen and playfully. So that was pretty awesome. That experienced that, and that's Justin, the two siblings, two children being together. I can't wait for you to have them be in their 20s going on 30 to see what life is like at that point for you. And the second half of the awesome is we had an absolutely amazing reunion of our Changemaker class. And I'm not going to go into any more detail in case anybody else wants to do more awesome on it. But
No, you go ahead.
it was, we had everyone here either virtually or in person. And as it turned out, we had all but one in person. So we had, fortunately, 3 of the people happened to be from Tucson, so that was pretty easy to get them there. But Karen Smith from your neck of the woods, Gail, from Hamilton, Ontario, actually flew down as a surprise to everyone. And Nancy Iannone drove over from Havasu. So we had everyone...
Which is 4 hours in each direction.
Right.
I mean, she drove about as much as Karen flew, yeah.
And we had Aaron Tierney on webcam. So, it was talking ahead at the end of the table, which was great fun. And it was an absolutely wonderful session to get people together. And it was a reminder of how powerful it is and how strong the connection is. And basically, they want to continue that even stronger, so they set up.
And it's been, February will be 2 years since their class.
So that was just totally awesome.
That's great engagement. Great to see them all coming back.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's wonderful because they came together. It was wonderful to see where they've been, where they've grown, each of them. They each have blossomed, which has been really pretty remarkable. And we've already formed a closed Facebook group for them so that they can continue to constantly be nurturing each other, and it's very cool.
I think you're next.
Oh, am I? Am I? Okay. All of my awesomes are work awesomes. Although I did get a week with my kid, which was really nice over the Thanksgiving holiday. A couple things. One is following up with all the work that we did in Nevada in September, following up with Christy afterwards, who I will be getting you guys a report on this hopefully soon. But Christy called me and said, I need an hour to just tell you all of the impacts of everything that you started while you were here, and how that has already rippled into changing conversations throughout the entire region of Northern Nevada, including various departments of the federal government and departments of the state government that are located there and operating there. So that was the most amazing hour to listen to how 1 week of conversations set fire. And then Gail and I were able to do the same thing with the folks at Rotary Charities to find out, after my being there for a week in Michigan in October, the ripples that have happened within all of their work and all of their groups. So it's really one of the things that has happened for me. A little bit coming out of our conversation last time, and a little bit it's just sort of been percolating for me, is that I am trying to really gather all of the evidence that we do have that our work is being effective. And one of the things that directly relates to the work of this board is that we continually say, well, you know, we have stories, but we really don't have data. Well, you put all those stories together and you got data. And so what I have been doing is tracking, for instance. I was very involved with Giving Tuesday stuff last week. How many retweets did we get off of things that I didn't even post? So how many things did folks like Amy Sample Ward at N10 and Beth Cantor post that then got retweeted 40 and 50 and 80 times? That's all data. And so that's been pretty exciting, and that's why I guess I'm really excited to be more aggressively tracking the things that came out of our trip to Nevada, the things that came out of our trip to Michigan. So yeah, that's really been massively awesome for me, because you know we've told Gail and several others that we are so used to getting notes that say, "Oh my God, you changed my life," and giving us details on how we changed their life, that we look at those and we go, wow, that's really cool. Now we've got stuff to do, so can we get moving on that? And I mean, we don't even track it, we don't even look at it, and so we're getting better at really being very conscious.
It's almost assumptive. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was really good. Okay, now what did you do on the thing that's due next? Yeah. So that's one of my awesomes, is just starting to really track and starting to be able to share more concretely. Also meeting with Kate and Elizabeth, who are volunteers, community members, volunteers who are helping pull together evaluating the panel conference and the results of the panel conference. So all of that is very exciting, that we're actually going to have data and evaluation. The second thing that is my awesome, Gail, you and Nancy are my awesome. Gail and Nancy, several months ago, I don't know, could be longer than that, committed to walking the path to become faculty for the immersion class. And sharing this journey with you, Ms. Valeria, and sharing it with Nancy, watching the fact that it's becoming very clear that Nancy's strength is going to lie in the changemaker area, and your strength is lying in the consultant classes, and codifying and figuring, taking all this stuff out of my head and teaching you guys how to teach, and the depth of what that means, so yeah, that's been really, really awesome. It's very exciting to me.
Ditto.
I want to add something to that component, and I want to talk for a second about Nancy. Nancy's in the middle of, or nearing the end of, getting her master's degree, her second master's degree. And what has been really interesting is most of her class is much younger than her. And what she is informing her work with is creating the future. And that
she's getting her MSW, so she's getting her master's in social work.
And so it has been very interesting to have her report and talk about how she has this lens over the things she is being taught and the things that she is working on, and how she's able to ask questions of her classmates and the impact that has. So in the realm of the feedback that we're getting, this is more of that in that very, very specific world, but it's very interesting to see how someone takes this back into an academic environment that's live and is able to see it. Yes, this is important work that we're doing. This is how we're supposed to do it, but look at it from this perspective. And she's getting ahas from her classmates that she's telling us about, and it's just really amazing.
Nancy is definitely a keeper.
Yeah, so are you.
I hope she's watching today.
And you?
I have two awesomes. One of them was on Thursday. I finally got to meet people that Hildy and Dimitri talked about in person, which was really awesome, including Nancy, because Nancy and I have been talking since I started, so in June, so that was fun to see her. And then on Friday evening, a few friends and I decided we just need to go to the beach, and so we drove to San Diego.
Oh my gosh!
Stayed in San Diego for the weekend, and I had a few fantastic fish and shrimp tacos, and we just walked around and seeing wreaths and like Christmas lights on palm trees instead of pine trees just made me giggle because I've never not had a white pre-Christmas or Christmas, so that was a lot of fun. So it was nice to just be in San Diego by the beach, hanging out. And we drove back yesterday.
Oh my
so.
gosh.
Cool.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's
And
fun.
for those who don't know, that's an 8-hour or so drive from here.
Yeah.
So.
Well worth it though.
It is.
Alex.
I'm Alex. I'm from San Francisco, California originally, currently joining Carl on this side of the Atlantic in Stockholm, Sweden. And my awesome is that I'm headed back to San Francisco. So, Candace, you may drive 8 hours for fish tacos. I'm flying 12 hours for San Francisco burritos. I'm very excited to go back, especially in the middle of Swedish winter, to go back to California sun and catch up with friends and family. And it'll take, amazingly, 3 weeks back in California. So, yeah, that's my awesome. I'm really looking forward to getting back.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, I don't know if you know that I grew up in Berkeley, and so now Pete's Coffee finally made their way to Washington, D.C., so I've been a happy camper for a while.
That's so funny. I used to smuggle Pete's Coffee back for my girlfriend because she really liked it. So whenever I would fly from San Francisco back to D.C., I would always fill up my bag, and so my bag wouldn't smell like Pete's until the next.
That's great. So we're going to need to get some of that.
And you know, we didn't introduce ourselves. I'm Hildy Gottlieb with Creating the Future.
And I'm Dimitri Petropoulos with Creating.
And I'm Candace with Creating the Future.
Is there anyone in the Twitter feed today?
We had an awesome from Lisa Jimenez, who said that she's listening while she's editing the December e-journal. Multitasking with Creating the Future is her awesome for today.
I love it. Well, it feels like we should be drinking coffee.
Well, I have to add Lisa then into my awesomes because Lisa taking over the editing of the e-journal is.
Also, we just had pop up Rebecca Hurd, and her awesome is each of you and the rocket fuel we provide each other and the universe.
Mm.
Yay.
Well, mine, this is one of those months when it's really hard to choose which awesome to pick because there are so many of them. But I guess the one that I want to focus on it comes out of the statement at the beginning of the meeting, which is we know that this future is possible because it's not impossible. And I guess I'm celebrating the fact that there are people coming back into my and my partner's life who have been away for a very long time, and whereas moments where it seemed absolutely impossible, now realizing that it is totally possible. And when people return, it's such a gift. It's even more special. It's even more incredible because it didn't ever seem like it was going to happen, and then there it is. And you can't really describe why or how, it just is. So we're pretty thrilled about it. Mm-hmm.
That is awesome.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Good for you.
great.
And Kelly. Good for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Long lost family members, so it's really, really spectacular. All right, so we have some work to make our way through in this agenda, and everyone has a copy of it. Minutes that were sent from last month, which are going to direct us. We were supposed to have a guest today. Linda Gertie from Vantage Point was going to be with us, but she has just returned from holiday today and didn't realize one of her colleagues had booked her into a meeting at this time, so she wasn't actually able to participate, but did say, please can I come to the January meeting? So she will be here on January 12th with us. Today we have just one item in our consent agenda, which is the minutes from the November board meeting. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion that we accept those by consensus?
So moved.
Thanks, Justin. And second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Who said that? I couldn't see.
Dimitri.
Thank you. Okay. And is there any objection, any errors or omissions that need to be addressed? None? Okay. Not hearing any objection to them, then therefore they are carried by consensus. Speaking of which, I know that we have a process in place for seeking a documentarian for our upcoming meetings, and hopefully board members will have some information about that for you in the next little while as we see what the outcome is of processes we've put in place with various universities or colleges that might have students who might want this opportunity.
Let me elaborate just a little bit. What we are seeking, in the past we have always looked for volunteers who were just interested in governance, interested in and we found them, but they've sort of ebbed and flowed. What we're realizing now is that this is a really good internship opportunity, primarily for journalism students. And so we're looking at anybody who's got connections in a school of journalism someplace or internship opportunities in a journalism school, because in essence what you're doing is you're taking notes of a meeting that's happening and you are reporting back out the salient facts. And so that is where we're approaching right now. So if any of you guys have connections in schools of journalism, Lisa Humanek, if you will let us know, Lisa, that you've got those connections, we can absolutely use them.
So you're like Ms. Subliminal.
I am Ms. Subliminal.
The first thing that came to mind is, of course, ASU has a good journalism department, and they're also an Ashoka U Changemaker school. So there may be someone that has both journalism and an interest in change-making as well.
Yeah.
I just put the link to their Changemaker. I don't have any connections there, unfortunately, but it could be worth exploring.
That'd be great. Wonderful, thanks.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right. So today we have basically two items on our agenda. We're going to continue the conversation from November, where we were looking at evaluation and what it makes possible in organizations and for teams and individuals. And we're going to ponder the idea of the acting Chief Mission Officer title. Are there other items that need to be included in today's agenda?
I would like to, and I don't believe that, I would rather we spend time on these two, but I would like to ask for an agenda item for future agendas, focusing on, and I'm loosely calling it intellectual property, just because right now there's no other name for it. I'm not comfortable with that as a name, but it at least is English words we will all understand.
Okay. Thank you. Any others? Okay. So.
And Gail, I'm wondering if we can, because I think it's going to be a brief. I'm wondering if we can do the title first, because I think that will be a relatively brief conversation.
Sure.
And if you want, Dimitri can figure out how to get the video.
That would be great.
Okay.
Do you need a couple of seconds, Dimitri, or?
Yeah. Okay. Let's give you a moment here, and I'm going to pause us while I'm doing this. So let me go in here.
Are you pausing? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm going to turn the sound off. So I can leave the sound on and turn it off.
Okay.
So I was going to turn it off.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so where did they go?
I think they muted their camera.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Sorry, not muted.
Dimitri is just getting stuff set up, so he's muted us and he's blipped us out so that what will appear instead of us is the video.
I see, okay. Do you want to do any setup for this, Hildy?
That's what I was going to do, but he keeps muting, so it makes it hard.
1 minute.
Am I muted?
No.
Okay. What you're going to see in the video is what has come out of all of the discussions that the board has had over the past several months about planning, about the future of how do we measure our impact, how do we accomplish the mission, and what we have taken, therefore, as our charge to as our strategic priorities for the coming year, probably 18 months. So that's in the short video that you're about to see. What has become clear to me, and you'll see that in the video, I introduce myself as the Acting Chief Mission Officer, which I've never done.
Hi, I'm Hildy Gottlieb. I'm the Acting...
Yeah, there she goes.
Hildy, you interrupted yourself.
You know, I do that. I don't just interrupt everybody in the world. I interrupt myself as well. So yeah, let's watch this, and then I'll share with you why I am thinking about that title, and I would just like to run that all by you guys. So.
Okay, I'll be setting up in just a second, and let's undo the camera, and we're going to do a screen share for this. Share on that.
Can you guys see that now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
This is exciting.
Go back and start it.
It's down in the corner there, that little tiny dot there. I think that'll do it.
I think you have to go into the
YouTube.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because I'm in our
Hangout. Okay.
Yeah. I'm
so
in the Hangout,
down there.
So,
no, that one. There you go.
And, I know why, because it's not there.
There you go. All right. Now go back in the Hangout.
Hi, I'm Hildy Gottlieb. I am the Acting Chief Mission Officer at Creating the Future. One of the questions that we are asked most often is, what are you guys working on? This video is our attempt to answer that question. Everything we're working on at Creating the Future stems from several decisions made by our board of directors. Our board established our vision and mission, as well as the 10-year deadline for accomplishing that mission. Our board has insisted that we walk the talk of the engaged, participatory communities we want to see by opening up our own work to full participation. Our board has committed to resource Creating the Future's work by building meaningful trust relationships rather than transaction ruling. Our next few years will be all about putting the board's intentions into practice to accomplish our mission. So let's start at the beginning. To create the future we want, that vision must be our true north. If we are 100% successful, then what will the world look like? For us, that vision is a world where everyone, everywhere, is naturally bringing out the best in each other, living well individually and collectively. Our mission, therefore, is to ensure that everyone knows how to do that. So if we intend to accomplish that in just 10 years, what needs to happen? The most obvious answer is that we can begin walking the talk of that mission from the start, engaging a cross-section of individuals from all walks of life who also want that result. We're far more likely to succeed if all those people are bringing out the best in each other, creating an integrated effort that is co-owned and co-created by all of us, with Creating the Future as just one among many participants. Think about successful social change efforts. Was the U.S. Civil Rights Movement the project of one particular organization? Of course not. If we want to see a tipping point where people are interacting from a place of possibility and connection rather than reactivity and suspicion, our greatest likelihood of success is a movement, not a project of one organization. When that kind of effort is spearheaded by passionate people from all walks of life, all around the globe, those individuals naturally contribute whatever they have to make it work. When we're all in it together, resources seem to appear by magic. That is the theory of collective enoughness in action. The knowledge that together we have everything we need. It's only on our own that we experience scarcity. A major goal of this project, then, is to demonstrate a more connected, collaborative, and joyful way of resourcing change efforts. Because scarcity-driven transactional relationships only happen when we see ourselves as separate from each other. Our plan and our timetable for making this happen is simple. By the middle of 2016, we want this group of partners to be implementing a range of programs that will accomplish our shared mission. What that means is that our job over the next 18 months is to put the pieces in place so that by mid-2016, implementation is possible. In this next 18 months, we'll be co-developing a plan that will answer the question, how will we accomplish our mission in 10 years or less? We'll identify partners who not only want to learn and plan alongside us, but who will apply what they learn to their own work outside this project. We'll create a continuum of ways for people to participate so that we can walk the talk of inclusiveness by meeting people where they are in their ability to be part of this effort. One major precondition for success is to have key roles in place from the onset: the Chief Mission Officer, an engagement coordinator, an operations coordinator, and probably a few assistants. This is an area where many social change efforts stall, and our 10-year time frame doesn't allow for stalling. These positions may be housed at Creating the Future initially, but that may change as the project develops. And lastly, all key positions will need to be succession ready to ensure the project can succeed even if one or more key people are gone. So that's Creating the Future strategy for 2015. By mid-2016, we intend to be developing the full range of programs that will accomplish the mission, alongside partners from all walks of life, in an independent effort to ensure that everyone, everywhere, knows how to bring out the best in others. In the meantime, we'll be putting the pieces into place to ensure we're ready to hit the ground running at that time. We hope that you will be part of this effort, because we all have the power to create the future we want for our world, and we want to work beside you to do just that.
Alrighty, we're back. This is this is annoying.
Just went into the next video.
Went into the next video. God help us.
Okay.
All right.
So the question on the table, Hildy, is?
The question on the table is that I have, as you guys know, I have no intention of being the Chief Mission Officer. We've talked before about the fact that Chief Executive Officer is a meaningless title. It talks about where you are in a position among positions, but it doesn't say anything. That if our intent is to accomplish a mission, then we need a Chief Mission Officer. And you guys know that I have always said that is not the best place for me. That being said, I also have resisted using the title now because I don't want people. It is typical for people to think that the founder wants the job, and I don't want the job. I'm not good at the job. I shouldn't have the job. You should hire somebody that is actually good at this. That being said, if I'm going to start engaging people to be full partners with us in that way, I think I need to have that title. I need to have a title that isn't cute, which the Chief Boundary Pusher thing is very cute, and I'm grateful to you, Gail, for coming up with that. And I'm happy for that to actually be what my role eventually becomes. But for right now, I think that I need to be using the title of Chief Mission Officer and to be very, very clear in the fact that I'm not going to have this job permanently, that I'm doing it until we have somebody who is actually doing it, and that was where the acting thing came for me. So, and I want to do this with the board's blessing, so I don't want to just say, oh, by the way, you know, here's who I am now. I really want to do this with discussion and if, you know, if it's not a good idea, then I won't do it, but I want to have that discussion. So.
So two questions are on the table then. The first is the title Chief Mission Officer, and the second is the use of the word acting. What are your thoughts, folks?
I'll throw in my thoughts on the latter question, which is I'm perfectly comfortable with acting, whatever it is that we come up with. The first piece, and I know this is a real semantics kind of thing, but I'm starting to hear a lot of chatter and pushback around mission in some of the walks that I'm walking. People feeling like mission seems to miss kind of the strategy, benefit, impact components of work that's being done in our communities. And I only raise that because I actually know, this ties back to the conversation I know we had in the last session that I missed out some of, that I'm even struggling with how mission gets addressed when I'm working with organizations. It seems very secondary to what's really core to the work that we're asking people to really do, which is really the visioning and the strategy component. And so I just have a little angst that comes up for me around using a term that I'm feeling less and less aligned with in my own work, and some pushback out in the world around mission. Not that missions aren't important.
My thinking had been, Justin, and as we've talked about it over time, it's the thing that I've liked about it, is that if in fact we use the word mission the way it is used in real English, which is that it is something that we accomplish, that the job of the Chief Mission Officer is to accomplish that. The job of the board is to find the strategy or the core leadership team, board and staff and whomever, the folks who are participating, Rebecca and Lisa and whoever else is out there on Twitter. It's our collective job to determine what we want to accomplish, to what end, which is the vision, and what we want to accomplish, which is the strategy. But I have never seen an organization that has said, this is what we're going to accomplish, and here's the person who's in charge of making sure we accomplish that. And so that's why it's always resonated. That's where the resonation has come from me, the resonance.
Okay, I would suggest that it feels a bit of a mouthful, the job title as a whole. Acting Chief Mission Officer, it's very long, would be my guess. So I'm not sure it needs acting. And I suppose my argument is that if you go around and you say you're acting, even though we would know that you're not going to do this for the long term, I wonder if it might create a sense of instability. That means someone might think, I wonder, Hildy, should they build a relationship with you because if someone else is going to come along, they'll have to start again. So how about founding Chief Mission Officer?
Maybe.
Other thoughts? Alex, what does this say, speaking to you in what ways?
I mean, to me, I'll be honest with my biases. I'm just not a big title person. At my last social enterprise startup, my co-founder and I had the title co-founder for 3.5 years and never really worried about that. We had, of course, job descriptions and roles that we took on, but the actual title didn't matter so much to me. And I think in this case, Hildy, I appreciate you coming to the board just to get the buy-in to make sure that we're on board. But this is one where I just don't feel much need to manage it. I appreciate the sort of pushback, and I think Justin and Carl, great points in getting to think through it. But ultimately, I sort of side with whatever makes you come alive with this position. So this isn't one that I feel so strongly on.
Okay.
Yael, what are your thoughts?
I think Carl's idea is a good one. Which is in the chat. It says lead superhero, and I actually support that one. I'm perfectly to be honest. I'm a little bit in Alex's world of. I think it would be great if you were simply called a co-founder. Yeah. And I think I had the sense when we talked about this the first time that the word acting makes sense to me, only because I really feel that we do want to underline the fact that we are transitioning towards something, and I want us to all understand that this is temporary for you. But
if you guys are good with our working out what makes sense in the situation, given, then I just wanted to make sure of that. I didn't want any surprises, I guess is where I was coming from. So I didn't want any surprises for you guys.
I wanted to comment to the point of not needing titles. I agree with that in principle. In this case, because we are talking about redefining to some degree what the role is and better describing what the role is, I'm almost wondering if that's not an important component of this.
mm-hmm.
That language, I mean, we talk about changing the questions, change the world. Well, change the language, change the perception. And to Justin's point, I think that mission has been devalued because it has been used so inappropriately or incorrectly, or I mean, that's my judgment on that. So that's I see value in having that, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Actually, Dimitri, you just made me think of something, which is probably the title, and this has been our experience in the past. What we call something will probably be defined by the details of what the role actually ends up being as we define it, as we go through our planning work and our planning process. So perhaps we can use it as a placeholder for now, with the knowledge that when we get into some really serious consideration of exactly what it is we expect, or what the accomplishments and expectations are for the role, it'll become even clearer what that name might be. Great. And I'm certainly conscious of the experience of people in some of the organizations I've been working with, smaller organizations that don't have a huge staff to manage, who are actually looking at a way of completely changing the role of what was formerly an executive director position to some really interesting thinking about how not to have an executive director or a chief mission officer or a boundary pusher.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so maybe we're a bit premature in thinking about the title rather than the content.
So, and I would go back to reiterating that, as while I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in, I agree with both Alex and Carl that this is an operational decision. But with that in mind, recognizing one of our deep values is to be a demonstration. And so I think as we look at that around the language, that whatever we choose reinforces with intent why that title. What is it, and that we can clearly back it up and back into it with folks to be able to say, and I think this is what you're getting at, Gail.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just reiterating that point, but just being very, very conscious that what we choose has sort of exponential intentionality because of the level of demonstration that we're doing. So it shouldn't be taken lightly, but it should be taken with, okay, if what we're trying to do is reclaim mission, where else are we doing that? So that we're modeling that.
Yeah. The one last thing I want to say about this, because I'm really appreciating everything that you guys are saying, is that titles are not necessarily just for us inside. Titles are for people outside to understand who they're talking to, and so that's what I've been trying to be very, very mindful of. Is to bridge language in a way that, oh, they're used to chief something officer, oh, mission officer, okay, that starts to raise a question, or starts to raise a, oh, okay, I've never heard that. That's really interesting, an interesting way of bringing my brain back to what I should be paying attention to. It's also a way of very subtly and quietly saying, what the hell does a chief executive officer mean? So there's a lot of stuff in there that I've just found really interesting in terms of the perception of the person to whom we are talking, which is the whole reason that I've wanted to do this. Otherwise, I'm totally good with whatever title or no title, or that it's all about the fact that if we're going to be engaging partners all over the world to pull something together, that they have to have a sense that this is the person in charge. So.
Dimitri, did you want to add something?
I agree with what Hildy's saying, is that it's as much for the outside world as it is for putting a nameplate on a desk or on a door in the office. And if we're talking about creating partnerships with a wide variety of people, entities, and whatever, I think that is part of the calling card. It's not just creating the future that's coming to you. It is someone who is talking about the mission of creating the future. It opens the door for conversation. I think that puts it on a different level than just, because if someone walks into the office and hands you a card and says, "Hi, I'm the CEO of X," well, you sort of know what they are, but it doesn't raise any questions for you. That doesn't start a conversation around that. Where this opens the door to mission officer. What do you do? What's that? Why do you have a mission officer? So, I mean, that's kind of how I've perceived it.
And I appreciate all of the feedback. It's really helpful. Thank you, guys.
So I just want to add one thought, and that is, Dimitri, to follow on your point, as we think about the next person that takes this position, we may want to be, or Hildy, maybe you're thinking about this already, in whatever title we end up choosing, we want to be able to set them up. I think Carl's point is really interesting, that people who we want to be partners with need to know who they're talking to. And as we use the word acting, we're actually, as opposed to founding, it may actually be a subtle difference, but something that could empower the next person who's in that position if we use the word acting rather than founding.
Or founding rather than acting.
No, acting rather than founding.
Okay.
Because we do want them to be in a position of strength, that they are now taking on this role, not from the founder, but from the acting director.
Lots to talk about as we go along. And
okay.
what I'll also do is I'll share back with you guys what response I get from people.
Okay.
Yeah, I can definitely give a +1 to that, to the idea of kind of testing it a bit, and I'm very fine with you testing it and see if it does engage people in those types of conversations, and if so, then that's accomplishing what we want, and if not, then maybe we think about it. We can use that, I think, use that as a tool to engage in the conversations that you want to. Speaking of that, I just posted something in the chat. If you guys are curious to check it out, just in an article I read last night, actually, about how to tell people what you do and actually be remembered. Just because it reminds me a lit... bit of this idea that you don't just tell someone you're a CEO, and they had a little strategy for saying, "This is my title," or "This is my occupation." But what that really means is ... So it could be kind of interesting if you want to use the introduction as not just a way of getting that meeting, but actually getting people to be pushed a bit.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you.
Nice. Okay, let's change gears, folks. We now are ready to move into another phase of the conversation that we were having at our November meeting. We started out that day, in that month, by looking at the reason why evaluation would be important. We thought about for whom it would be important, and we spent some time pondering the conditions that would have to be in place. We also thought our way through what would success look like when we were evaluating ourselves, our teams, our individuals, our volunteers, our board members. So now, sort of deepening that conversation for today, it's an opportunity to start looking at the practicalities of evaluation for creating the future, and asking that we consider that in terms of not just individuals, but also for teams that come together, whether they're planning the through faculty conversations or philanthropy or marketing or whatever. We want to know that we're having a way of testing ourselves, of checking ourselves for success.
Gail, I had a thought or two about this that just made me smile, which is that we've talked before, I think it was our September meeting, where we, in eschewing the transactional and building the trust relationships, that we have stopped differentiating, just as you were starting to suggest here, the teams. Differentiating, this is a paid employee versus how do we treat a quote volunteer versus and the thought that occurred to me was I love, because I hadn't thought of our teams, so thank you for adding that. The two thoughts that occurred to me were and again, this is such transactional language, contractors. So you and Nancy and Kim and Lisa are faculty, and Lisa is taking on a role as of the e-journal. And so what does that mean for our quote evaluating or valuing the people who are in all of those different roles, whether they are being paid, whether they're not being paid. And I was also thinking about, in terms of teams, all of us as board members. So those two things came for me as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. And, we did go down the rabbit hole a little bit of thinking about the who, but we didn't really specify in great detail as I'm thinking about it now. We got right into what would effective evaluation that brought out the best in one another make possible, but I'm not sure we actually did name specifically who we're thinking about. So thanks for pointing that out.
Well, and I would say, jumping from what Hildy was just saying, that really what we're talking about, again, back to a major theme, is engagement. Because we talked about this as a board, 3 board meetings ago, when we said, what are you in it for? What are you hoping to get out of board service? And, wanting people to share that back. And so I think, when you talk about whom this applies to, I think it's any person who's coming into sort of deliberate contact with the organization, meaning they're engaging to help deliver mission strategy. What we come up with as this process should scale across those things. It should think about a volunteer, a contractor, a paid employee, a board member. So that there's some fundamental key pieces of what feedback do we want about that person's contribution to advancing the work, and what conditions make it possible for us to get that feedback and engage in that feedback.
Now, you're talking about feedback, Justin, from the people they encounter and engage with?
No, I think for them as individuals. So if it's a paid staff member, what are we hoping their relationship is? What's their engagement with the organization and the organization's mission? And the board members, what's our engagement with the mission? And how do we evaluate the effectiveness with which we engage and deliver and advance the mission?
So think about some of the words that are being then attached to this conversation. So we started with performance. That was one of the lenses. Now we're thinking about engagement and what it takes to get people connected.
Learning.
Learning.
Yep. The opportunity for us to learn from the interaction and the opportunity for the individual to learn. So there's the people that are involved in the interaction, there's the organizational learning, and there's the individual learning. And the individual learning, one of the things that I've gotten excited about in thinking about this and rereading the notes and listening to the last board meeting is the opportunity. We've talked so much about the opportunity to grow as a person in a job, whatever whether it's a paid job or not. The extent to which that has been raising for me. I was scribbling about it as I was sitting and reading this morning. it is the learning about how am I fitting into this job, or what am I learning about this job, or what am I learning from this job, but there's also the self-learning about what am I learning about myself, and what do I want to explore next for me, or what do I need support next in exploring for me. So those two pieces, both the personal and the, because that, if we're talking about real relationships, then that seemed to,
Yep.
They just felt like there's a lot of good, juicy stuff there.
Yep. So performance, learning, engagement, feedback, Justin, that was another word that you just used. So as we're defining the word evaluation.
Relationship.
Yeah, I was going to say connection.
Okay.
I would also add to Hildy's list of what you're learning about. While those components of self are very important, it's also the context of the organization. What are you learning about the organization and how it works and how it can work better? Because again, we had talked in the last time that, you know, the huge opportunity, and oftentimes the missed opportunity, is we evaluate the person and their performance, failing to take the opportunity to evaluate the organization and its performance in that process. You know, and how often do you know, the people who actually work there have really great ideas about how to make it better or how to accomplish things. And so, you know, I think acknowledging that is important.
And I guess underperformance would be the engagement with the outside world. And I'm trying to think about it from the perspective of, if we're doing a review and a volunteer talks about creating the future, or engages, or in the course of their volunteer work, is basically representing creating the future by virtue of the fact of their volunteering, is there a feedback loop there as well for what that outside of the organization, person, organization, vendor, whatever, what are they perceiving? And how do they see it? So it's sort of like the evaluation of the panel conference. You know, this happened, we can evaluate us and what we did. What's the impact of that engagement? How do we measure that, or how do we at least become aware of it?
Okay. So it sounds to me like we need some, we're kind of thinking, we're delving more into the why and the conditions right now, rather than being ready to start thinking about the application. Does that sound like, is that what you're all hearing as well?
Gail, was there, and I'm sorry I don't have it right in front of me if it's in the minutes, was there a summary of the things we want evaluation to accomplish for the individual and for the organization?
Not likely.
Okay.
I mean, you were relying on me to take the minutes, and that was done on Friday, so no.
Yeah, no, well, and that's how you would know, and I don't have it printed out in front of me, so.
Here's what's in my notes, and help me out, folks, if you have other things in yours. We said that evaluation makes it possible to find strengths, to create and to be clear about what exactly it is we're aiming for, to understand who it is that's involved in our conversations, empowerment versus accountability, and reflection on where we're at as opposed, and where we're at in terms of where we intended to go. That's what I've got recorded in my notes.
So what I'm wondering, Gail, is if we had a really good, strong conversation last time about, which really, in my recollection, was really deeply rooted in the values that we want to undergird evaluation. I'm wondering if the question of what do we want evaluation to accomplish for the individual and for the organization, and then what needs to be in place for it to accomplish it for both of those, which I think will then tell us what we need to do.
I'm sorry, Hildy. My feed blanked out for a second, so I missed what you said.
Okay. I said you look fabulous today, honey. And are you losing weight? That was what I said. That color is amazing on you.
And Gail, don't play back the recording.
Carry on.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I said is I'm wondering if the question, what do we want to value? We did a really good job of looking at the values, I think, that we want to undergird evaluation. I'm wondering if we could ask the question, what do we want evaluation to accomplish for the individual and for the organization? Conditions need to be in place for it to accomplish both of those things, and I think that if we get that, that will tell us what we need to do.
Yeah.
And I think that we almost have to break that down to be really clear by the who. So I think that it's going to be different for employees versus board members versus volunteers versus etc. What do we want it to accomplish for them and especially for the organization?
Okay.
So we want to identify those.
I think we need to have them in our brains. I think we need to have them right in front of us.
Right, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. We need to
Yes.
we need to identify so that we could see where
Right.
oh, this applies to all of them or only to this one.
Right. So for instance, starting with employees, because that was where we started, what do we want employee evaluation to accomplish for the individual? What do we want it to accomplish for the organization? / mission. And I'm more comfortable talking about for the mission than for the organization.
So I'm going to step into this just from I'm an employee. Everybody come with me because you've all been here. I'm going into an evaluation. Old school. The questions that I think are in my head. Do I know what I was supposed to do? Am I any good at it? For my own, is the person that I'm going to be sitting next to feel the same way about how I do things that I do? How can I contribute more? What do I want to get out of this conversation? I don't know what that's. Is this going to be humiliating? I'll stop there, but those are like what that pops into my head as I am that person stepping into that space. Those are some key things that I think come across my mind.
If you want to not be taking notes, it would be really helpful to have your perspective.
Yes.
Just to be thinking about the question, and because what do we want, and what as an employee, what do we want to be?
I think it would also be really helpful, given what we just said about our understanding of the unpackaging evaluation, to be thinking about engagement in terms of engagement, learning at the individual and organizational level, performance, feedback, connection, impact on community. So thinking about it in that frame as well, and I'm going to put those into the chat so that we can see those words. If we had a flip chart here, that's probably what we would write on the flip chart. Yeah, Carl.
So I'm quite boring about this sort of stuff because my research background. So I would sort of, broadly speaking, think of two types of evaluation. So what people like me call a formative evaluation is about our process. So the stuff that we're doing, does anyone actually need it? How great is the need for what we do, and can we understand the need for what we do? So that might be part of the formative evaluation. And then the process evaluation would be about what's the magic ingredient of what we do? What's when we get from A to B and B has changed, what is it about our process that's actually making the difference? Is it the engagement that Justin was just talking about then? Because when you look at employee surveys all the time, they always sort of, and my understanding now is that employers will all say that, you know, the one single thing that they really want to understand is engagement, is employee engagement. So the whole formative stuff, yeah, is what we do is needed, and how does our process actually work so that we can learn over time, as Hildy was saying before, and we can change. But then there's the sort of stuff that, okay, so we've done all our work, and hopefully something has changed. So then you have the second type, which is your summative evaluation. So what outcomes can you see that result from your intervention? And outcome evaluations might target specifically on the things that you were hoping would arise from what you were doing, but then you could look more broadly and think about your impact. So your summative evaluation might then not just think about your intended consequences, but your unintended consequences as well. You know, I mean, where you've made a difference where you didn't expect to. And then just finally, you know, I mean, the sort of thing that you come across in these sort of summative evaluations is this thing actually a good use of everyone's time or money? So some sort of cost-benefit type analysis that might be time, might be money. I don't know. So they're two quite different things for me. There's one that's about our processes and could we learn, but there's then, I mean, are we doing better than someone else that wants to change the world? Sorry, that was a bit of a rant.
Good.
So I've been thinking about both of these things, and I see actually just three variables that I think are the most important. So I see alignment, motivation, and learning. So a lot of this comes from a book that I read, which I think I mentioned last week, called The Alliance by Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn, which is basically all about this new theory that we're no longer in this world where you work for a company for 50 years, but rather you work for a year or two. So it's crucially important that you align the employees' goals with the organization's goals, and when you do that, then you both thrive and succeed. I also come in with a bias of saying, you know, Justin, you did a great job of empathy there with sort of the person going into the feedback session. But I'll also say that I think very rarely will you have someone that will say, you know, I didn't do a good job. And I think also you almost always, at least in my experience as a, say, employer or manager, you have a good sense if someone's doing a good job or not. So I don't think the evaluation needs to be quite so much in terms of are you hitting these things. And you sort of know. So I kind of look at it in a binary state. Either one, this person not doing a good job, which doesn't mean they're not a good person, but just not the right fit. And I think that's usually actually much clearer than you think. Or then, assuming that they're not a bad fit, then it's optimizing for the best fit. So to that extent, then, I think about learning. So one, learning, is the organization on the right path that it wants to be on? So you have this mission where you want to be, this vision. Are we taking the right steps? If not, then, you know, how do we recorrect? I see a lot of employees, perhaps, that think they're working towards the mission. Maybe they're not, and they're obviously trying new things, and maybe they're not working. But those aren't a matter of a bad employee, but just a matter of misalignment. So in that case, then, I really think it's about being able to learn from the organization side what's working, what's not, whether you're aligned. And then from the employee side, again, assuming that we've sort of weeded out any that are the clearly bad employees, then it's really about motivation. And so are they motivated to continue? As long as they're motivated and you're aligned, then you continue working together in a good way.
Alex, I think that's really interesting, and it's all about, that's all to me process evaluation stuff. One of the things that I think we have to do as creating the future is an accusation that could be made against us is that, I mean, you are all working towards the mission, and in that sense we fit your criteria in terms of you know, I mean, we're a good fit, and, you know, I mean, people are achieving our mission, but an accusation that could be leveled against us is that this is all self-indulgent nonsense, and that actually your mission doesn't make a difference. So we've still got to go for that sort of summative evaluation that actually are other people's ways of achieving their mission more effective than ours? Because if so, I mean, we might then say, okay, well, I mean, this was great, but we found someone else's way is better, so let's all pile into that instead.
So coming back to, in terms of what do we want employee evaluation to accomplish for the employee versus what do we want employee evaluation to accomplish for the organization, one of the things that I'm hearing on the organization side is the does the employee understand, feel, is their work furthering the mission? Do they feel that it's furthering the mission? Do they feel connected to the mission? Is both accomplishing for the employee and accomplishing for the organization? That employee evaluation could accomplish for the organization. If you've got a whole bunch of people who don't feel that they're furthering the mission, then that's something that we need to know as an organization, that we will know through employee evaluation.
Yes, but employees also want to know that ultimately they're making a difference and that the mission that they've signed up to makes a difference, because if not, they're not going to feel motivated. People want to change the world. That's why they've joined in our gang. And
what do you think, Carl, that it would take for an employee evaluation to feel that the organization is accomplishing the mission?
I think when we talk about organizations needing a theory of change to know about how they move people along, I think individuals who want to feel that they're contributing to the organization delivering its mission, they almost have to have their own little theory of change, or they maybe need to think about where they fit into the organization's theory of change, so that they can have that sense that they're not just delivering the mission, but then the mission is making a difference. There is some logic to the thinking between I turn up for work at 9 a.m., I send emails out to 50,000 supporters, and then those supporters become aware of an issue, and 10 of those 50,000 supporters then actually go on and do something and change the world.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm ranting again.
No, you're not. That's an excellent point, and it puts me in mind of how important it is for us to be making space for the people who are engaged in work, whether they're paid or unpaid. Not only are they doing the work, but they're actively collecting and reporting the stories about what happened as a result.
Well, and this takes me back to the comment from the last meeting around ownership. And I think that ties in with what both Alex and Carl are saying. So that idea of alignment, am I aligned with what the organization's theory of change is, but also do I own a piece of it? In terms of, that's what I was hearing when you were talking, Carl, of what's the piece of it that I feel like I am manifesting in moving forward, and do I feel like that piece matters? And then, so there is the construct, the larger construct of, is the theory of change valid? Are we actually seeing the kind of change we want? And then what's my relationship to that? And that's the alignment piece that I'm hearing from Alex.
There's a slightly less charitable version of that alignment piece, I think, Alex and Justine, which is an argument I've come across that people, all our supporters, see themselves as heroes, and they see us now as the facilitators of the change that they're making. And I think those individual people will want to feel that, they know that they're making a difference, and I think we have to help them think about how we are the vehicle that helps them make the difference.
And Carl, I was just about to make a comment which you are touching upon, and that is the feedback back to the people, volunteers, employees, staff, board members, whatever, on the impact or the examples or how the difference is being made. And I go back to the old diaper drive days, that someone's volunteer effort may be nothing more amazingly that they stack diapers in a warehouse. They come in and they do that. Well, how is that furthering the mission? And a big part of what we did at that time was communicate with them the specific stories of impact that this was having, so that they could connect what they were doing with the impact that they may not have had any direct connection with it, because we're talking about be able to see the impact of the work that they're doing and report back or whatever. Well, depending on the level of volunteer work, not the level, but depending on what you're doing for volunteer, what you're doing as a board, what you're doing as a staff member, you may not be aware of that. So I see that as being an important component, is having that pool of information or feedback or whatnot, because sometimes you don't see the direct connection from what you're doing to the change that's happening.
Absolutely, Dimitri. I came across a volunteer a couple of months ago who worked in the equivalent of your warehouse at the diaper distribution centre. He literally worked in a warehouse for a charity, and he said that he has these sort of days where he's not sure that what he's doing makes a difference. So he didn't literally pull it out, but he then described he carries around with him what he calls his little book of making a difference, where every time he sees something really good in his organisation, he just writes a couple of lines about the good that he saw someone do. And he said, and when I have my days where I don't think I'm making a difference, I just take my book out and I read tiny little thing, read a few of the examples from there, and we need the equivalent of that, because some of what we do in terms of evaluation is about stories, but I think some of it is probably harder evidence that does compare us possibly with other interventions.
Great example. Quick aside, years ago we worked with a leader of a hospital, CEO, whatever, who would walk around and ask employees at all levels to report back an example of their mission in action. So the organization's mission in action. So the janitor, give me an example that you've seen of our mission in action. So that became something that they were very conscious of, just like this little book, very conscious of the impact. In that case, they're very conscious of how are they making a difference in that facility, regardless of the level, which encouraged them to do things to reflect that.
I just typed a fill in the blank into the chat box, which is, we want employees or board members or whomever to be able to blank because of their evaluation. What would we fill in the blank? Okay. Carl says to want to come to work. What would it take for them, for evaluation, to help them want to come to work?
I have the feeling that there's going to be a continuum. The answer to this question is actually a continuum, because, yeah, there might be moments when it's as simple as, are the conditions of work so fine that I actually feel like coming. But on the other hand, I'm hoping that we're also thinking about things that cause people to strive for abilities, skills, attitudes, beliefs, values, whatever, that we may not have had, but are seeing ourselves reaching towards, moving outside of our comfort zone, stretching ourselves, however you want to call that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we want employees to be able to stretch and strive for values because of their evaluation?
Well, and because of our expectations of them.
Okay, and what I'm looking at this point is, if we are talking about the act of having a period of evaluation, what do we want the result of that to be for the employees? We want them to be able to what because of this evaluation?
Well, this is one of those instances where I feel like it just oversimplifies, but we want them to both feel and actually be able to contribute to effectively advancing the mission.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me it seems that simple. I think actually the issues that are coming out, and as I was listening to Carl, I was really thinking about, again, you can't look at individual evaluation without the context of the organizational evaluation, that summative component, and how important that is. And so then that just gets me back down to some of those values. I was looking at your fill in the blank, and I wanted to, I know you were getting at what could they do differently, but I kept coming back to,
how could they be differently?
Yeah, I kept coming back to, they feel affirmed, they feel inspired. They feel empowered to take action and ownership that are there. And I think to what Carl is saying, they feel validated that what they are doing is changing the world. And I think it's a little different than affirmed, because affirmed is you're doing a great job. We appreciate what you do. Validated is, oh my gosh, I just had that breakthrough moment. Oh my gosh, I saw that, yes, the 10 out of 50,000 people that I managed to move actually created legislation that did X. You know, that's validation. And so those four pieces, like if we get those, you know, and I have the belief, if we have employees who have that, they're going to be pretty darn good, and they're going to decide very quickly if they're not the right fit.
Right. Yeah. Two things as you're speaking, Justin. Two thoughts that come to me is one word is encouraged. Encouraged to step into what is next, and the other word was supported in doing that.
Sorry, me again. I thought what Justin just said then was really profound. I think Justin has just described a theory of change for employee engagement that starts off with inspired, then goes to affirmed, then goes to empowered, and finally goes to validated. I really think that's a theory of change for employee engagement around this stuff. I think it's brilliant.
Cool. Yeah.
Can you write that down and publish it for me, Carl? Oh wait, no wait. This is creating the future IP. Wait.
Yeah, the genie's out of the bottle, Justin. So.
Well, I think everybody knows how I feel about that. So. Let the world have at it.
So then what? If we were to change the blank, we want the organization to be able to blank because of the evaluation. What do we want the organization to be able to accomplish because of employee evaluation?
Is it circular to say highly engaged people?
Could you repeat that? It broke up.
Well, I guess it's coming right back to what we talked about. Highly engaged people reaching for their highest potential.
Okay, so the organization will be able to what? What do we want it to accomplish for the organization if we have those highly engaged people? I mean, what will evaluation accomplish for the organization?
Sorry, I don't know if I'm just being a bit obvious here, but the organisation will use its resources more effectively because people will be focusing on the things that make a difference. It will lead to this sort of virtuous circle where in turn you will be more likely to attract resources, whether that's people who are paid or unpaid or whether it's other sources of funding, because people like success and they want to buy into success and they share in that success. So if you have evaluations that show that your organisation is making a difference, they will more likely to put resources into you. I suspect if those people know that your staff are happy and engaged because they know they're doing a good job, they'll want to work with those sorts of staff people, because no one wants to work with someone who's miserable, who thinks they're not making a difference. I mean, it's sorry, I don't know if I'm being obvious here, but it's.
You're being fabulous. Just keep talking.
and the validated thing. I mean, I know we don't think about things in monetary terms, possibly in the way that some other organisations do, but in my day job, everybody wants to know what works. They want evidence. Yeah, states everywhere. They want data on what works. That's a whole argument and so on, but there you go.
It's great stuff. Great stuff. What else?
I'm trying to figure how to incorporate the informing the organization with the knowledge of the volunteers, the staff, the employees, whatever. In other words, it's what's coming back. So the growth of the organization based on that part of the evaluation is, here's what I've learned. I'm the volunteer. Here's what I've learned, or here is a perspective. I mean, exactly what's going on right now with the board in this meeting is informing back to the organization the perspectives, the knowledge, the history, the experiences that make the organization better on the next round in terms of whatever they're doing.
And what that's popping for me is, Alex talked before and others about there being a fit, and I think the organization would know if there is a fit as well. And do we have the team we need for accomplishing what we need? So Gail, you talked before about using evaluation for teams. We're using it for employees and volunteers and board members. Do we have the team that will accomplish what we need? Is there a fit for our mission needs?
Well, one of the things that's so interesting about this conversation, I remember the faculty discussion, we immediately started with these questions, figuring out fit and, how would we qualify people and so forth. And by the end of the first conversation, we realized that we were actually even more interested in finding out ways to support people to become a fit as opposed to walking in the door being a fit. So I do think there's another piece to this that we have to pay attention to, which is we may be evaluating to see what we've been successful at, but we also have to think about how our program contributes to the success of the people that work for us.
Mm-hmm. To know what support is needed to
bring out the best in them.
I'm being drawn back at what Dimitri just said. Takes me back actually to Carl when you were talking about summative evaluation. We are only the people that execute. That's what the organization is. And yet we want some sense of succession and longevity. So how is it that the evaluation codifies the success in the theory of change and the knowledge that we know of what works and what doesn't work so that it actually begins to live? So how does it inform policy? How does it inform program design? How does it inform our knowledge of the theory of change? So there actually seems to be sort of the flip side. The personal side is everything that we talked about with the engagement. But for the purposes of the organization as a sort of standalone entity, it should be getting codified success. I think that people can, either replicate or continue on, or somehow we need to capture back to the organization what it is that's making it all work, and how we continue that. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense to me, and where I differ slightly from you, Justin, is that you say that we are the people who execute. Well, we're the people who execute in the laboratory. Yeah, let's go back to what we said that we are. We're a demonstration project. Yeah, how can we possibly say to other people what's worked in our laboratory you should do if we can't evaluate it in some sort of rational scientific way?
God, however, I completely agree with you, Carl, but there's something that's really pinching me, and it's because much of our work isn't about changing necessarily conditions, it's about changing questions. So if we are, well, it is about changing conditions, sorry, but
we've still got to know, Gail, that changing the questions works.
Yes, absolutely, and documenting is critical to that, documenting impact.
And how did we get people to change the questions? I think, okay, if I'm going to be really harsh, you could say that actually, it's morally wrong of us to say that what we do, you should do, if we don't have some sort of proof that it works, because if we don't have some evidence, some evaluation that it works, we're encouraging people to go and use to use scarce philanthropic or volunteer resources that might have no impact.
I completely agree, and I think the thing that's making me feel uncomfortable is the part about us telling people what they should do.
Yeah. Okay, I see where you are. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
But I really do agree with you, Carl, completely.
Yeah. One of the philosophical and what is happening is getting hung up on the word should. We have big signs all over the office. We never use the word should ever in anything we do.
You should never use it.
You should never use it. Write that down. And you should never give advice. And I'm telling you, never give advice. But I think where you're getting hung up, Gail, is that we technically don't tell people what they should do, but in modeling, it can be interpreted that we are an example in demonstrating what people might do and have the opportunity to do that can ask a different question. Because, again, coming from the point of view of this being a laboratory, we're exploring together and learning together and sharing what we're learning. So there is no should involved, and I think it's a getting hung up because that word always makes me go crazy on the this is what people should do.
I also want to add a thought here, and there's something that's bothering me too, and I'm not sure what it is. And as I think about it, it might have to do with evaluation and time frame. What are we evaluating over what time frame, and how do we determine whether it's appropriate or not? Because is there a cost benefit to this? Over what period of time is there a cost benefit to this? And if we jump out and evaluate, well, we talked to 500 people today, or 10,000, or whatever it is,
or our 3 employees,
and this goes to the nurturing and development stuff as well. Well, they just don't get it, or nothing happened as a result of this today, or tomorrow, or in the next 6 months, or whatever the time frame is. A big part that has always drawn me to this work that we're doing is that it's almost spiritual in a way. That Carl, prove there's God. If you can't prove there's God, then why do we have religions? Why are we spending so much time and energy if you can't prove that exists? Let's move on to something else. That obviously that has not happened. So I'm not saying this is religious in that context, but what I'm saying is that there is a degree of, when you get down to and I use cost benefit in a euphemistic sense, when you get down to the real cost benefit, well, this didn't pay off, let's move on to something else. It may not have paid off in this time frame, or there may be other components that we're not measuring. So somewhere there's a blend in between, but it's been something that has been, it's just uncomfortable. I'm not sure why. But
if I may, many people share your discomfort, Dimitri. There's a whole literature around evaluation and the ethics, I suppose, of evaluation. And I suppose what I was sort of thinking here is that where we have a contribution to make here is that, first of all, as you've said, we don't tell people that they should do something. Okay. One of the things that we know about best practice from all evaluation is that it's highly context contingent. Yeah, and that context varies significantly between different places. So what is working really well for us might not work for someone else. So we shouldn't talk about best practice and should, but we can talk about promising practice and could. Instead, and then we can talk about evaluation methods that recognize that we live in this sort of complex world. This is what Phil Buchanan at outfit based in, yes, he sort of talks about how the Monitor Institute sort of come along and talk to foundations about how your philanthropy should be sort of strategic, and he instead says no, your practice should be emergent. Instead, because we work with complex systems that sort of change over time. So instead, what we can sort of say is that maybe we're not, actually, and maybe I'm saying the wrong thing here, but we're not a laboratory in the sense that we sort of grow things and then test them. But what instead we're doing, we're prototyping. Yeah, we're not piloting like some programs do. We're prototyping, and every time we get a bit of feedback from our evaluation, we're changing, and we're incrementally sort of changing and learning what works. So hopefully not doing the sort of evaluation that Dimitri rightly says, I mean, is probably not helpful for complex environments like ours, but we are learning and we are pointing people towards the right direction.
So I want to. Here, apparently on the screen, I'm sitting next to Carl, which I want to lean in with Carl. So which way do I go? This way. So we're live. So I'll say this is the calling the BS, which is there is a point, because we talked about validating from the employee standpoint in this engagement. There is a point that if we have a belief system, we do have to have a mechanism for validating how that belief system advances something, and to demonstrate that. And even going to Dimitri's example of religion, while I can't prove God, I can prove what belief in God makes possible in certain pieces. So I can go to what that belief makes possible, or what I'm expecting to see. And so I think to Carl's point of, and I know we've sort of going back to the point that we do have to have something that, independent of time, independent of context, that we can come back and say, yes, this is what we're looking for. And I know it's embedded in our process. What does success look like? And we just have to, I think, just commit to making sure that we are grabbing those indicators as we see them, whether they're anecdotal, whether they're deeply quantitative, whatever they are, that we just have an intentionality and a structure, which I guess goes back to what I was thinking about with the evaluation. The evaluation becomes one of the systems that brings in those pieces of data that validate our belief, that validate our theory, that give us the point to be able to respond and pivot if we need to, or move forward in that space if we need to. But it's the classic piece. Just because it's hard to say what the outcome is, doesn't mean we can ignore it. Because just like you said, if validation doesn't come forward, at some point people will say, "This is bullhooey."
Justin, I love your brain. And Carl, I actually, for all of the very British apologizing, I love your brain. It is always apologizing for the stuff that I'm like, what? This is freaking awesome. Just keep talking. So there's that. What is occurring to me as you guys are talking about what evaluation makes possible, will accomplish for the organization, what the organization is able to do because of employee evaluation, that it is a process, a structure, a system for helping prepare and support people in reaching for success for the organization, giving them the feedback they need as to where they're fitting into that success, and whether or not success is happening, period, overall. But I think also, that very realistically, it is also a place for helping people to identify and self-select if it is not a fit for them and if it is not working for the organization. Because we've all seen times where, people are hanging on. People just like being there. People either don't want to find another job or love being in a team. I don't know where that feedback is coming from. Love being in a team, but they're not participating in it. And I think that what evaluation does for the organization is to, in a supportive environment, help prepare and support them to succeed, but also help them identify and see where there's other avenues that they can take.
So then we meet the real world, which is most organisations, from what I see, commission evaluations for one reason and one reason only, and that is to satisfy the grant conditions of a funder or a commissioner.
And I also see too, and we talked a little bit about this last time, that what people use it for, if the question came up almost tongue-in-cheek of, well, if you're not going to use it to support your employees, then what the hell are you doing it for? And the answer was to determine salary increases and promotion.
So what you've just said to me is that if a small contribution that Creating the Future could make to the non-profit sector would be that we could contribute to the reorientation of evaluation so that it became a learning focused activity rather than a reporting focused activity, and it became connected with employment sort of management sort of stuff, so that we can help people understand their place in the organisation. I suspect HR managers up and down the country would thank you for a long time if this could be a tool that helps them with their employee engagement.
Carl, the only thing I will disagree with you with on that is it's not a small thing.
Well, and really, I think it's all of the things you just named, Carl. It's not one or the other. It's actually all of them.
Mm-hmm.
As it seems to me that a lot of the time we're deconstructing, right? We spend a lot of our time deconstructing the sector, particularly the community benefit sector, and we're asking ourselves what tests need to be in place in order to know whether it's working or not.
I don't see this as particular to any sector.
No,
I think that these are the,
we don't talk about businesses that often. We mostly.
Well, I am.
Yes.
I'm
yes.
You know, and we're going to be more and more. I'm hoping to.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to misspeak on that.
Alex, I'm curious as to your thoughts on how Carl described this for the nature of both in the social benefit sector, but also the nature of how you're envisioning the future of workplaces and the future of work relationships. I'm just kind of curious as to if you've had a moment to digest that and any thoughts or anything you might want to add to it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's doing lots of thinking, of course, but I mean, really, I think at the core, it's really fundamentally about learning. It's about learning for the individual, learning for the organization, and to the point of the people that stick around well past their time, and we think we're doing HR managers a service. We're actually doing as much, if not more, of a service to the individual that's stuck in their ways. So if we believe that people have this huge potential, then they're just not serving it if they're stuck in the same routine where they're no longer a fit for the organization, whether that's because they're not continuing to grow or they're stuck or whatever it is. So I really keep going back to just the core concept of learning as much as you can and seeing that alignment.
Please, sir, can I talk again?
Yes.
I love the way that Alex just described that, because I think one of the places where we've got to with evaluation is that people are terrified of it. An expression I've come across before is that everyone is scared to death that they're going to get found out with this evaluation, because we all think we're faking it all the time. And I really love what Alex just said then about, we think you have huge potential, and evaluation is about saying to you, how are you going to achieve your huge potential? I love that.
Yeah. And last time we said that we would know it was successful because people were rushing into the room for the evaluation because they couldn't wait to get the opportunity to talk about how amazing things have been.
Yeah. Yeah, and what that's really making me think about is that the actual practical systems and structures and process for evaluation needs to be, somebody mentioned before, emergent, in that it needs to help. We've been talking all along about what is evaluation that brings out the best in the individual and the organization. If we're about bringing out the best, what is evaluation that brings out the best? Helping somebody identify when it's not a fit and their best potential is elsewhere is huge. Is huge, and it is coming up with the often uncomfortable process for that, because it's most of us would just rather, oh God, I don't have to think about it. I can call it in, and I don't like calling it in, but I can call it in because then I don't have to think about doing something else.
This is a call-in show, by the way.
So we're coming back to Pollock's theory of change about inspired, affirmed, empowered, validated.
Pollock's theory of it.
So, Justin, it'll at least have your name on it, if nothing else.
How many of you have seen a situation where where evaluation has been aimed at in a supremely compassionate way, making sure that there's a perfect fit for someone? No?
I wish I could say I had done it, but I can't.
The only example I can think of is that most HR processes, when they're looking at jobs in an organization, will have some sort of job description writing process and job evaluation scheme that forces you then to fit any applicant for that role against the person's specification. But again, that's probably stating the obvious.
Right.
It's a slightly different. It's a slightly different case, but perhaps instructive. So, of course, in my organization now, Reach for Change, we invest in social entrepreneurs. We give them money, intellectual support, social capital, and so on. And we take a decision each year, and we say, okay, are we reinvesting you next year, or are we not? So it used to be what we called dramatically a go, no-go decision. And so that meant either you're go or you're no-go. So this year, we changed it to instead be a reinvestment decision. And so from the beginning, we really, again, align our needs with the organization, what we're looking for with the entrepreneur as well. So you can imagine, and so I've had 12 of these discussions now, 4 in which we decided not to reinvest, 8 in which we decided to invest. You can imagine there's, of course, very high stakes because it's about $100,000 per year, up to a few hundred thousand. And in most cases, people want the money. But a great example where people, when you kind of really clearly align what we want, what they want, and put things out on the table, we were able to, I think, pretty graciously walk away from a couple of cases where not only were the entrepreneurs not really serving our portfolio needs, but also we weren't really serving them as much. So there was one case where someone was quite a stubborn entrepreneur, which in some cases is a good trait because you're very strong in your vision. But ultimately, we want to make sure that the value that we're providing, the advice, is actually being used. And of course, you don't have to take our advice, but to at least be listened to. That's one example where we made it clear, look, we're not reinvesting you. It's not because we don't think you're a great entrepreneur. I still think she'll do great things, but it wasn't the right match. So I think that's the best example you can come up of where you sort of make that break amicable.
So I would love to see, I'm conscious of the fact that we're coming up to the end of our time and we have really not moved into the application part yet, but I would love to see us take some of the examples of lived experiences that we have, Alex, yours especially, and any others that you can think of over the next little while, so that we can take lived experience and take from it what we would want to inject into our own practice in this organization. Because mine are more on the employee side of things in some ways, but I've seen some stunning examples of what it means to be compassionately involved in an engaged, I don't like the word evaluation, but an engaged valuation of people when it's, the test is, are things going well and are things not going well, and what do you do then so that people don't feel that they've been kicked out. And I'd really like us to think about that more in terms of how it applies to creating the future.
Gail, one of the things that I would like to see, and I'm thinking that it may not be a board meeting, it may be a work team, it may be several people working in tandem, not even online, but just with writing. I think that there is enough from both of the questions of what we want evaluation to help employees accomplish and what we want evaluation to help creating the future accomplish. I think that there is enough here that we could start crafting a list of questions that we would want to use in such evaluations. I think it's more of a work team thing, but what's occurring to me is that what I would like to bring back to the board is I'd like to bring it back to the board and have the discussion about using those in various circumstances. So for instance, there is the legal and fiduciary obligation of the board regarding employees. It does, so I think that this is something that the board would want to talk about in terms of employees. On the other hand, there's the how do the questions we come up with fit with board members self-evaluating whether they are learning and how that is fitting into the organization, and et cetera. The same thing with volunteers. The same. So I think I'd like to. I think what's making sense for me, and I'd just like to run it by the group, is that we go into a work team. We come up with a process and a process for questions for both how it helps employees, how it helps the organization, and then bring that back to the board.
Is there a sense from everyone when you would like to have that happen? Just being cautious about not sending it out to the team and then, other things get in the way and we end up not seeing it again or talking about it again for some long period.
I'd like to see that conversation by the end of first quarter of 2015.
Susan?
And are there people who would like to participate in that?
I'd like to.
Yes, if I can. If we can make the times work with Europe.
We will make it work. If it means that I just have to come to Europe, Carl, I will sacrifice.
Alex, I wanted to make a quick comment about it. Just the word evaluation and the go, no-go that you said. It makes it a binary thing. When I hear evaluation, it's kind of a binary expectation of go, no-go. And I think about the work that was done up in Phoenix with St. Luke's, where they awarded grants, go, no-go, but then took everyone who applied and it ultimately created a system where everyone could benefit from this. So it no longer was an evaluation of each individual. They self-selected to work on things that they wanted to work on together, and what the organization did is it facilitated making all of this possible. So it moved way past just the go, no-go.
It was a learning community, an ongoing learning community that everybody could participate in. So it wasn't just the question that was posed to St. Luke's was, if you had more money, would you have granted more people? And they said, yeah, we would have. And so they opened up their. It was again a continuum. Over here, you get dollars and all of the rest of it, and behind what's behind door number one. But here, you can all participate in this learning community so that you're elevating and bringing out the best of everybody. So it became a yes and.
So we're coming to the end of our time. We have 5 minutes for reflection. I want to ask you to look back, and this has been an amazing conversation with new theories of change and names attached to them and all sorts of amazing thinking and meeting of minds. So what is standing out for you as we're wrapping up today? Carl, do you want to start? Because I know you're conscious of the time. Your mic's off.
I've missed a few board meetings, and it's bloody good to be back.
It's bloody good to hear you say it.
Yeah. Great that you're here. Anything else, others?
I will just share that I'm very excited about this. As the person, the acting and founding person who is putting this into practice right now, I am very excited about this.
My reflection is that this is an example of the laboratory, the test model, whatever title we want to put on this, of this kind of an action, of really exploring this and then thinking about it as a group and beyond to create something that like we played with the 990, something that is perfunctory and part of what HR people just do, and turn it into something that becomes way beyond what the expectation is. So I'm impressed and excited, and
when we talk about, and I've talked about this a bunch, the whole aligning, what someone wants to get out of working with an organization and the organization's goals. This is a great example of that. I mean, I feel like this is exactly why I want to be on the board, is being part of these discussions. I think I learned a ton tonight. I think my biggest takeaway would be, if I could call it, perhaps it's the Pollock hierarchy of needs. I think my takeaway would be around the validation. And I think I'll absolutely bring that back to the work that I do as well when working with some of my employees.
So I think that it's funny because when you said that, Carl, I looked back at some of my notes of how I was talking about board engagement. That hierarchy was, when people are inspired, they will then actively get engaged, and then they'll figure out how to work effectively because it's in their best interest. Like that's the hierarchy. And so this is, I think, just a variation of that. But the piece that's really jumping out at me is actually that fourth piece, which is the validated. That's what it seems. That seems to be the theme that really comes back, and it's how well do we understand that which we are trying to validate for the individual in terms of their potential and their emotional state, and how we want to validate and support that, the outcomes of the organization, and what it is that we're trying to validate through this process. And while I feel like it can go the realm of validation is too didactic or structured. I think, though, if we go into that space, it is supposed to be a validating process, which then forces us to ask the question, what is it that we are looking to validate, which drives all of this, and why it all connects back. So that's what I'm really taking away from all of this, is that how do you articulate and get into that space?
If I may just very quickly respond to that, you can't separate validation from the other bits of your theory of change, Justine, or else validation becomes judgment. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I was just thinking then as you were talking is that you could have an alternative theory of change that swapped inspired words, swap those 4 words, so instead of inspired you might have deflated, that all recognize how evaluation currently plays out.
Yeah, what I just scribbled down, Carl, was this must be a validating, inspiring, engaging, affirming, empowering process.
Yeah.
And if the process is all of those things, then it will reach for the best in a person, fit or no fit. As Alex was talking about, your potential is elsewhere, your potential is great, your potential is here, but if it's all of those things, then the best thing will come out of that.
My reflection is very similar. I'm a simple girl, though, and I talk simply. And so I think that we also have to be really careful about not letting it turn into anything transactional, where, it's the first question we asked about employees was, is their work furthering the mission? And I think we just have to always be so sensitive to the reality that there's going to be continuums all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Candace, we didn't hear from you. Reflection.
I guess I haven't had a lot of experience with evaluations. Just the past jobs I've had have never happened, and so it's really interesting to learn, just to hear about the possibilities of evaluation, the different types of evaluations, and coming up with a process that bridges a lot of that bridges between the organization and the person, I guess, because whenever I think of evaluations, I just think as the person. Like, how is this person doing for the organization? But I've never thought about how can this evaluation from this person help the organizations in a broader sense, if that makes sense. Other than that, it doesn't work or it does work. So.
Nice.
I don't know what it was when Candace was talking. Maybe it was because I was thinking about stepping into an environment where evaluation happens, and it just jumped to my mind that far too often this is episodic. this cannot be episodic. We think of this annual evaluation, and so I know that's kind of a whole other can of worms, but to me, as I look at this, if this is a process outcome, it's a continual process. So when we think about these questions, in essence, just like planning should not be episodic, we are talking about evaluation should not and cannot be effective if it's episodic. And so I would drive some. So I guess that's another theme that's coming out across this. That
It's continuous.
Plays into it.
Yeah, must be continuous.
Yeah.
So we come
it
to
undoes that construct. It undoes the construct of here are the questions we ask you every year, or here's a sit-down conversation we have every year.
Well, and I hate to do this in the last second, but what it does is it blows the word evaluation out of the water, and it becomes how we be with each other in a place of employment or in a place of in a place of interaction. When it comes to the board or the volunteers, and we say the hell with, we're talking about evaluation because you're supposed to have evaluations, and what if there's no shoulds? What if we don't have to have evaluations because we have an ongoing process of supporting and bringing out the best in everybody?
And that's being versus doing.
Versus doing.
Right.
Yep.
I hate to end this, I really do, but unfortunately we are at the end of our time. So thank you everyone for all of your contributions, for all of the time that you put into everything you do for this board and for this organization, and all of it is appreciated. It's coming up to a holiday season. I hope everyone has a wonderful, happy, affirming, safe time, and we will see you on January the 12th, if not sooner.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.